think one of the first things that would be really helpful if people came to church thinking about being open to that this experience isn't just about what they need, right? That this experience is about what other people need, of putting others first. You're not coming here for yourself for that hour. Regardless of what all of our stories are, we're all blessed. It's clear we're all blessed. And the responsibility of that is to bless others. And so how can you bless others? By giving them your time, by giving them your ear, by sitting with people. And it's really that simple to start out with.
You just heard the voice of Laura Sennott, our hospitality coordinator at Trietsch Memorial United Methodist Church. Thanks for listening to the Life Plus God podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Robinson, and I am so excited to have Laura on with us today because there's not a better person to explore this question: how can I live with radical hospitality? And I think a lot of us, especially those who are more inclined to be hosts or maybe have parties, enjoy having people stay over at their house, we all have the basic understanding of what it is to be hospitable. Even if you're someone like me who is an introvert and hates the idea of having a house party, I've stayed in hotels. I've gone to places where I know what good hospitality feels like. But when we put this word radical in front of it, I think it takes on a whole new meaning. And sometimes, as a church, we're trying to live into this idea of radical hospitality. And sometimes when I stop to think about it, I don't even know what that means and what that looks like. Mm-hmm. But I hear that Jesus gives us a pretty good example of what radical hospitality is. So, Laura, thank you so much for being here with me today. And when I think of hospitality and someone who knows how to make people feel welcome and special and important, I think of you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That's very sweet. Thank you.
So I'd like to hear from you first. What does the term radical hospitality mean to you, and how is it different from ordinary hospitality?
Yeah. When I think of radical hospitality, I think of going above and beyond. I think of surprising and delighting people. I think so often when we think of hospitality, it's almost a checklist. Like, I welcomed them at the door, I smiled, I greeted, whatever. I've cleaned the house, I've put the food out, I've done all those things. And really, in my opinion, radical hospitality is seeing people, is acknowledging people, is being there. Many times, and Jesus was a perfect example of this, it's simply sitting with people. It's not fussing, busying yourself around a place. It's being there and seeing them for who they are, listening and being open to find out who they are.
Yeah. I think anticipating the needs of people. I think sometimes what I see in you is that you know what someone needs before they know it.
Yeah, that's our goal. That's what I tell my people all the time. We're going to try to meet needs that people didn't even know they had. And that's not always easy to do, especially in groups, large groups of people. It can be a little more intimidating. But we try to think about ways that we can meet needs before, that people might not know they have. I can give you an example. One time, this is a horrible event, but we had an event here and our air conditioning went out. And I think it was one of our plays, and it was in the middle of summer.
Oh, the event wasn't meant to be horrible.
No, the event was not meant. The event was amazing. But our darn electricity, actually, it was caused, I think, because they had shut our electricity off for something that they were working in the city. And so we had a room full of sweaty people. I think it was July, and it was this beautiful play. And we had no air conditioning. And I'm, what can I do for these people? They don't want to leave in the middle of the show. What can I do for these people? So we quickly ran and got as much ice water as we could and put it out and served and, tried to put some fans out, try to make it cool when they came out for intermission. It's just thinking, what can I do in this moment that could help some people,
And I mean, I'm sure people are just so annoyed, but I'm going to bring up the Enneagram again. I think that for people who don't know anything about the Enneagram, I'm just going to talk a little bit about orientation to time. Based on your personality type, you have an inclination in orientation to time. And Laura, I know you're a 2 on the Enneagram. And so your orientation to time is present. You are living in the present at any given moment, which is what makes you so good at hospitality, because you can stop and look around you and see what's happening. And it comes more naturally to you. I know that we all need to work on it, and it's not easy, but I am an 8 on the Enneagram, and I am future oriented. I am always looking to what's next. And I'm the exact person that you're talking about, of like seeing hospitality as a checklist of like, okay, I've done all of these things so that I can move on to the next thing that's needed. Is there a place in hospitality for someone like me who's more future oriented, or maybe someone who is past oriented, who they're always nostalgic about what's already happened, but you have trouble bringing them into the moment, because it's all these different personality types that we're all trying to say, here's how you do hospitality, but there has to be a different way for different people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I need those checklist people too, right? Like I need those people who I can give them a task and they're like, okay, I've got this, I can do this. So yeah, there's room for all of those people. And really when I talk with people that are going to join our team, I talk with them a little bit about like, where do you think you feel comfortable? You see what we need here. Where do you think you feel comfortable? And, here's the other thing about that, Alyssa. Really, God calls us into this, right? Like, this isn't just for a task for us to do that we're comfortable with. This is a task for us to grow into. There's room for growth in this. There's room for you to step outside of the box that you sort of put yourself in, or where you feel comfortable. And there's things to be gained in that, for putting yourself in different places than you feel comfortable with. Now, is that a good place to start? Probably not. But many times, and for whatever reason, I'll try to recruit people that are for ushers, and they're like, oh, no, I'm not comfortable with that. They're so intimidated by that. I once had a lady that was an FBI agent who told me that she wasn't comfortable being an usher. And I'm like, you carry a gun with you to work every day. Like, how could you be intimidated by being an usher, right? But so you find the place that you find what you feel comfortable in to start at. And I don't just mean in serving in the church. I mean everywhere. Like in this world, where you feel comfortable at. A lot of times people who are introverts, if I make you make a connection with somebody, or if I ask you to make a connection with someone, that's really difficult, right? But if
you ask me to call someone, I will put off that phone call for a month.
Right.
Like there's a block there that I'm like, you want me to dial a number and call somebody?
Right.
Can't do it.
Yeah. But if I told you to find a way to surprise and delight your neighbor, that's kind of easy probably, right? I'm not a real true introvert, so I don't know that. But if you don't have to do something face to face, if you could leave something on a door, if you could put a garbage can back up, if you could, find a way to surprise and delight your neighbor, that feels doable. And I think generosity, that kind of hospitality and generosity grows and is infectious, and you want to do more of it. And I think a lot of what my own personal need to spread hospitality is about is thinking about the times that I have felt so warmly welcomed and cared for, and that I want others to feel that as well. And I think if people sit in that for a bit and kind of think of the places and the times that people have made them feel like they matter, because that's, at the end of the day, that's what hospitality is making people feel like they matter, that they belong, that there's a place for them there. If you think through those times, it suddenly, for me anyway, it feels like an easier task to offer to others.
Can you think off the top of your head any of those moments that really stand out to you of a time that you felt so beautifully welcomed? Yeah,
one of my favorite stories is I went to Mozambique. We have we're partners with a village, Chikuki, in Africa, and I went on a mission trip there one year, and there's so many stories. They taught me so many stories about hospitality. One is the gift of time. They joke about, there's jokes about chikuki time, and really chikuki time means that they're not the best at, if you schedule appointments with them, they're not the best at showing up at, you've got these teams of people that are coming there to do this work with them, and they make schedules and say, we need you to be here so we can do this work, and the people don't always show up in time, and it's not that they can't keep time. It's that wherever they're at, whoever they're speaking with, that's the most important thing in front of them for the day. They give you their undivided attention, and they're not going to say, I'm sorry, I got to run. I've got another appointment. That's just not who they are culturally. But the story that really resonates, that just taught me so many lessons, was we were invited. Well, first of all, when you go to Africa, you sort of get this sheet of paper that gives you all these do's and don'ts of things to be careful for and watch. And, of course, there's a lot around food and water and that kind of thing. There's things about being out at night and just a whole host of things. And so one night we're invited to a woman's house who has just graduated from university, and she's throwing a party, and she wants us to come for dinner. And first off, she's graduated, and she's throwing the party, and she's doing the cooking, and she's doing the inviting. Okay, that's huge, right? But we're coming out at night. We're supposed to go out at night, and we're not supposed to go out at night, but we're coming to her house at night, and we're also supposed to be particular about the foods that we get. So there's this anxiousness among the crowd about, should we be out and should we be eating this food? And we get there, and the woman is out back. Her kitchen is outside, and there's a spread on the table, and you can tell she's been cooking all day long. And you sit down in her living room, and you're looking at the food, and you're thinking, should I be consuming this? And that, I don't want that to sound rude or negative, but our stomachs are geared different towards the food that we're accustomed to having.
And that's everywhere you travel. There are certain bacteria that the locals are raised with, and their stomach can handle it, and ours cannot. Absolutely.
And so there's this huge full fish on the table lathered with something that looks like mayonnaise, and you're just thinking, I don't know if I should be eating this. We're all apprehensive, but you're on the spot. You're going to have to eat, And she had 4 sons, and they come out, and they've got perfectly manicured, pressed white shirts. They've got towels over their arms. They've got basins of water and pitchers. And they come to each one of us and assist us in washing our hands. And that moment for me, everything, all of my apprehension, all of my concern, all of my anxiety went away, because I thought, if they've given such care for me to have my hands clean for my meal, they've given care for everything else. And if I get an upset stomach, oh well, their hospitality, I will not turn this hospitality down. They're offering everything they have, and I'm going to partake in it. And it was a huge lesson for me.
It's a really beautiful story.
Yeah.
Well, not all of us get to travel to Mozambique to have that experience. But I'll share a smaller experience of hospitality, but it made a huge difference to me. The church I go to out in Dallas is Oaklawn United Methodist Church, and it's very different from Trietsch in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways is it's a much, much smaller congregation, where, I had grown up in a church like Trietsch, actually Trietsch exactly.
Right. Just like Trietsch. Yeah.
Just like Trietsch, where there are so many people. It's very easy to be anonymous if you want to be. If you want to come into a space and not make yourself known and not talk to anybody, like, you can kind of sneak away, blend in the crowd. When you're in a sanctuary each Sunday of less than 50 people, you can't hide.
Right.
If it's your first time there.
Right.
Everybody knows. And Oaklawn, the very first time that I went, the pastor came to meet me. The lay leader came to meet me. Like 3 or 4 different people before the service even started came to introduce themselves to me and tell me that, they're so happy that I'm here. And then for a lot of people, this would be a nightmare, but it was just so genuine and loving. I didn't feel put on the spot at all, but actually at the end of the service, they do announcements and everything. They had something called Lunch Bunch where anyone who wants to, they're right in the heart of Oak Lawn. And so many restaurants within walking distance of the church. And so they say, hey, anyone who wants to, today we're going to walk across the street to Matito's to have lunch today. And when they were making that announcement, the pastor said, Alyssa, we would love for you to come. And then Christine, who turned out to be one of my dearest friends. We ended up moving in together after my divorce. She came over and said, hey, I'd love for you to come with me to Lunch Bunch. Will you come sit with me? And that it was that moment that I'm like, oh, this is my church.
Right.
Like I go to church here.
Yeah.
I went and I shared a meal with everybody, and it was literally people grabbing me by the hand, bringing me from place to place to place, inviting me to things outside of the church. And that's where I developed the best friends of my life who ended up supporting me through the worst time that I've experienced thus far in my life. And it was just that, it was intense but meaningful hospitality of we see you, we want to welcome you in and bring you into the fold, and we're not going to make you feel like you have to incorporate yourself because we're going to embrace you and grab you, And I wish that in a large church that was more possible. Sometimes it feels overwhelming when you're in a church on Sunday morning that there are 500 people worshiping alongside you. You can't reach everybody like that.
Right.
And well, let me amend that. You can, but it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, it takes more than the team of people who have volunteered to do that on a Sunday morning.
Right. It has to be a part of the culture.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I see that. I see people do that. I'd like to see that more, I'll be honest. But I see people do that. I've told this story before, but I remember we had for a while a young man that was visiting with a service dog. And one Sunday somebody came to him and said, can I get your dog water? Like they saw him, right? And your story is a perfect story of or example of something that I read years ago that resonates with me. And it's really that you have to, for people to believe, for people to be a part of something, you have to make them feel like they belong. Those people convinced you immediately that you belong there.
Yeah.
And because you felt that you could be a part of, you knew immediately this needed to be your place. And that's our job. That's our goal. That's what we're trying to do, right?
So I know that this is something that we want to focus on, especially over the next few years of shifting our culture to be more about radical hospitality and it to not just fall on the shoulders of Laura Sennott, our hospitality coordinator, and she's responsible for welcoming all 500 people who walk in the door for this service on Sunday morning.
Right.
So do you have any thoughts on just high level? I'm not asking you to put a full strategy in place or anything, but for those who are listening, who are part of this church, they're like, yeah, I want that to be a part of our culture. What are the small things that we can do on Sunday morning to take that easy step in, as you mentioned, like start where you're comfortable?
I think one of the first things that would be really helpful if people came to church thinking about being open to that this experience isn't just about what they need, right? That this experience is about what other people need, of putting others first. You're not coming here for yourself for that hour. We, regardless of what all of our stories are, we're all blessed. It's clear we're all blessed. And the responsibility of that is to bless others. And so how can you bless others? By giving them your time, by giving them your ear, by sitting with people. And it's really that simple to start out with. I mean, that sounds really complex for some maybe, but when we invite you to greet those around you, could you say more than hello? If you notice the person wasn't there last week or hasn't been there for a few weeks, could you acknowledge that? Mm-hmm. Because that tells me that you noticed that I'm not here. We all want to know that we matter, right? Could you, hey, say, I'm about to go and get a coffee. You want to join me? I'd love to know what's exciting in your life right now. Just connecting with people and finding out a little bit more. It is harder in a big church. You don't know everybody in a big church. You don't know. A lot of times people know their little circle, and some people don't know any circles. I've never been quiet about when I first came here for 2 years. I worked really hard to not know a single person. Mm-hmm. It was my goal. I'd come from working another church, and I just didn't want to.
You didn't want to be asked to do anything, or what was the feeling behind that?
I wanted to stay lost. I wanted to stay lost. I needed to not help anybody and not take care of anything, and so I wanted to stay lost. And this church let me do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you think that was a good thing or a bad thing?
I worked real hard at it. I know how to do it because
you can't force people to want to be included.
You can't. No, you can't. I worked really hard at it. I'd worked on staff at a church for years, so I knew what I needed to do to stay lost.
To evade.
Yeah, I did, and I worked really hard at it, and I accomplished that, and then I didn't, and then I said, I know what it means to be a part of this church, and I want to be a part of it, and so I started getting involved and being a part of small groups and stuff. But really, it is about just not thinking about your own needs and thinking about other people's needs, and looking for opportunities to see people because they're all around you. It's not that hard. I suppose for task people, I'm making this really hard because I'm not giving you a list to go down.
I know, you're not. It's very broad. Of just be present. What?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, that in my opinion, that's what it requires. I come here open every Sunday morning to whatever the needs are. We're going to try to meet them, whatever they are. I don't ever know exactly what they are. I have some ideas, but I don't always know what they're going to be. And whatever it is, we're going to do our darndest to try to meet them.
Well, I think, I really liked what you said about when you step in the church, be open to the experience, that it's not all about you. I think that so often, I know I'm guilty of it. I'm sure, all of the church is guilty of it. We go to a church for, how is this church going to feed me? Mm-hmm. How is this church going to help me grow? Mm-hmm. How is this church going to support me during my hardest times? Mm-hmm. Which, yes, is part of being in this community. But if it's all take, mm-hmm. then it's going to feel empty at the end of the day. And so I really like this thought of before I enter the church building or as I'm getting ready in the morning, just to pray, God, help me to be open to this experience I'm about to walk into. Don't let it be the same routine every single week. Don't let it feel like going through the motions. Let me experience something new and different and pay attention to what's happening.
Open my eyes. That's my prayer all the time. Open my eyes.
Yeah.
Open my eyes. One of my favorite sermons, the pastor preached on willing to be willing. And that's what I'd say to people. Be willing to be willing. Walk in this door to be willing to whatever comes in your path,
So let's talk a little bit about the Bible and what the Bible says about hospitality. Are there any stories from Scripture that you think are a good illustration of radical hospitality specifically?
Yes, I think all the Bible stories about in the Bible, all the stories in the Bible are about radical hospitality because it's so different from how we do hospitality. But one of the ones, and it doesn't seem like a big story. Again, you're gonna be like, that's so vague, Laura. But Abraham had just been circumcised. He was an old man. He'd been circumcised. He was laying in his tent. It was probably a hot day, and he's just hanging out, probably resting. I vision, and here comes 3 visitors, and he hops up, and he welcomes them in, and he feeds them, and it turns out that they're God. They're acting as God. Acting as God. They are God. They are telling Abraham, "Hey, Sarah's going to have a baby. And all he did was get up and greet them and meet them and open his house and feed them. That's all he did. But it was a lot. And because he opened himself to that, he learned of this blessing that was about to come to him. It's just huge to me. What do we miss because we don't open ourselves up to what's there for us? And opening our homes, our life, our heart to people gives us blessings. So that one's, I love that story. It's a simple story. You know, I think, where did they learn this kind of hospitality? At the feet of God. God took care of everything they needed. All along, God said, I'm going to bring you from this place and take you to this place, and you'll want for nothing.
I wonder if that's the obstacle that we have, is realizing that we have everything we need. Because when we get so clouded by our own wants and needs, it makes it impossible for us to see the needs of others.
Absolutely.
Because Abraham could have easily been like, listen, I'm 75 years old and I just got circumcised. I'm not having a great day.
Right. This is not the day to take on visitors, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about ourselves right now. Like if I've had a procedure, I'm not opening my front door, right? I'm not. I mean, even if I don't have a procedure, I'm probably not opening my front door. That's who we are, right?
What about Jesus with radical hospitality? One of the first things that I think of is him turning water into wine, but I'm also like, that's not relatable. Yeah. Like, I can't do that. Right. Is there something that we can learn that is from Jesus that is like relatable and something that we can take away of like how to implement radical hospitality? Yeah,
Jesus sat with people over and over and over, right? When anyone was an outcast, when anybody was calling person names or prosecuting somebody, what did he do? Persecuting someone, what did he do? He went and sat with them. Over and over, we hear stories of him just sitting with people.
Yeah.
Think of Zacchaeus. He just went and sat and had a meal with them. He just broke bread with them. Over and over and over again, he does that.
One of the stories I love that just came to mind about Jesus is when he is walking through the crowd and he's just surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of people who are trying to get to him and get his attention. And this one woman just had the thought, if I could just touch Jesus, then I would be healed. And she reached out and touched him, and it said he felt power leave him, and he stopped to find this woman. And it's like, I think that that's a really beautiful example to me of like, he had somewhere to be.
Right.
He was doing things. He was in the middle of his tasks. And I guarantee like the disciples were probably really annoyed that he's stopping all the time to be with people, because they're like, we got a schedule to keep. We got to get somewhere by nightfall so that we, can find some place to sleep tonight, all of that. But Jesus stopped and he's like, I felt someone touch me. Who touched me? And connected with this woman and healed this woman out of the hundreds of people who were clawing for his attention.
Right.
And I think it's the presence of mind to see who is truly in need. Not that the other hundreds of people weren't in need. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know what to do with that story, but just the willingness to stop what you're doing mid-task and say, you know what? This isn't getting to my next location isn't a priority right now.
I don't have to check off all the boxes today. That's not the goal of every day. The goal is to stop at some point and see some people and acknowledge people.
Yeah. See, and I feel a lot of pressure to check off the boxes, not just from myself, but from others, because there are other people depending on the things that I get done to get their stuff done.
Right.
And like I know I work for a church, so it's very encouraged to be hospitable and stop and talk to people and engage with people and all of that. Like as a staff member, we're supposed to do that.
Right.
But I'm very much like, no, I have stuff to get done to keep this, whole thing running that I'm trying to accomplish. But I'm like, what happens if I miss a deadline?
Yeah. So I have a story yesterday. I don't want to tell it. I'm not trying to brag on myself, but I'm not trying to, you know what I'm trying to say. Yesterday, my lists are long right now, right? It's a busy time of year for me. And there was a church member who came in and she was struggling a minute to get through the building. And I was tooling by with my little cart and I could see she was having trouble. And I said, hey, do you want to hold on to my cart? Would that help you? And she said, that really would. And so I saw her to the door and she held on to my cart and we didn't go the same speed I would go, right? But it took me a minute or two extra, right? But in that, I learned there was a beautiful story from her about that cart that I never knew, and her late husband. And so, I was here 2 minutes longer yesterday than I would have been. But if I hadn't have stopped, I wouldn't have been blessed by that story.
Mm.
So.
Oh, man. You're good at it.
Thank you.
It's really hard to do. And I know that you're good at it because you've been practicing it for years. Has hospitality always come naturally to you? Or was there a time that you weren't good at it and you had to like build up to the awareness that you have now?
I definitely think I've built to the awareness that I have now. I've always felt that my place in this world is sort of to gather groups of people, but I always was really task-oriented about it. I can remember hosting and having groups of people and leaving and not feeling like I'd done everything on the list, but I didn't connect with anybody. So I think I've grown into that. I think the awareness has grown over the years. And like I said earlier, sort of thinking about the times that I feel, and obviously because I've been at this job now for 6 years, I'm hospitality oriented. I'm watching when I'm out in the world and seeing where I feel hospitable and where I don't. And I think so over time that definitely has grown. Yeah. Because I think of it as of course it's going to be, in my opinion, because I think of it as a serving thing, right? And so that's not stagnant. That's never stagnant. That's always growing. Mm-hmm.
So you're obviously leading us within the church to become more hospitable as a congregation. What about outside of the church? What are the things that you've experienced, that you've done, that are about increasing that awareness of what needs to be happening around you?
Yeah, it's just more of the same, right? Like being aware of the people around you. I recently was commenting to a friend of mine that I get annoyed in the grocery stores because people don't greet you like they used to, like the people that are checking you out, the cashiers. They don't talk to you. They don't look at you. They don't acknowledge you. And it's an annoyance of mine. And I was telling my friend about it, and she was like, oh, I ask them questions. Oh, I start talking to them. I ask them about their hair. I ask them about their nails. I ask them if they've had their break. You're like, oh, you mean it's not about me, right? And so I think it's almost this thing that we wear. It's not that we wear it when you cross these doors. We continue to wear it when we go outside of it. And the same things that we talk about and we practice here, let's take them there. Yeah. And let's see people. Let's care about people. We have nothing to gain in that situation, in that we're not trying to recruit you to be a part of our church. We're not, that's not our goal. But what if we just try to see people right where they're at? Yeah. Oh, you're not just here working an 8-hour shift. Yeah. Oh, you have needs, you have wants. So, the other day after that friend said that to me, I went up to the girl as she was doing. I said, do you have to make anything for Thanksgiving? And she said, I do. And I used to work in a grocery store a long time ago. And I said, oh, you see what people are making all day long. Does it make it harder for you to decide what you're going to make? Or does it make it easier?
Or does it inspire you?
Yeah. And she just, my groceries were done and she's still talking to me. Mm-hmm. So, Yeah, it's not about us. All of it. It's not about us. Everywhere we go, it's not about us and our needs being met. It's about seeing people.
Yeah. I think that for me, there's a little bit of fear of like when I enter the church, it's a safe space where like if I reach out to connect with someone, there is the assumption that they will respond to me with kindness. Because we have this shared faith, shared values. And it's rare in the church building that I reach out to connect and someone responds to me, angrily or, but in the world, I am always afraid that I'm bothering someone or because I'll say, I hate small talk. I'm not the person, like if you're trying to strike up a conversation with me at the grocery line, that will feel depleting to me more than encouraging. And so I have that attitude with other people of like, well, I don't want to bother you or I don't want to offend somebody. There was a time and I felt horrible about it. So in my neighborhood, there's a lot of homelessness and I was driving my car and there was an unhoused man who was in a wheelchair, who had his cart of cans and his belongings, and then was rolling his chair up a hill. And I saw that he was really struggling. So I pulled over my car and I got out and I said, "Hey, would you like some help?" And he said, "No, get away from me." Like just very guarded, which I understand. I understand. He lives a tough life and he has to be on guard of anyone who approaches him. But then I started spiraling of like, oh my gosh, should I not have done that? Did I offend him? Did I make him feel like he can't do things by himself? And so I was just like, okay, like, you're doing great. And I got back in my car and drove off. But then I was embarrassed. I felt like, and then it is making it all about me. But like, those are real feelings that kind of like made me hesitant for a while to try interacting with an unhoused person again, because you don't know what that person is experiencing. And sometimes like you're met with gratitude and, generosity and like have good conversation. And sometimes you run into someone who's like, I'll hand out a bottle of water and they're like, I don't need water. I need money, and it kind of like puts a dark cloud over the whole interaction. And so I think like getting outside of these church walls, you're going to run into people that don't have the expectation of kindness that you have in these church walls. Right. And I don't know, I don't have a solution for that, but I don't know how to like shed that fear of upsetting someone or, bothering someone. Right.
The thing is that we never know how we bless people. We never know the things that we do, how they affect people. And, I can tell you all kinds of stories of things that people have done for me. And I bet if I went to any one of those persons and said, the thing you said, the thing you did meant this to me, they wouldn't even know. They probably wouldn't have even remembered the thing, right? So we can never know what our actions do for somebody. In the moment, it may not come off well. You don't know at the end of the day what it does. And it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter that you know how you've affected somebody, if it was taken well or not. It's that you tried. It's that you were willing. And we can't let the times that it didn't go so well keep us from offering those blessings to others. We just can't. That doesn't put us in a good place. This thing that we have that we can offer and care for each other, it's limitless within us. And that's easy for me to say, that because somebody took something negatively, we can't quit offering it. That's easy for me to say. I think.
I'm sure you run into that within the church walls too, of like someone didn't take it well when you tried to help.
Absolutely. Yeah. That happens. But I have to keep trying. And I have to hope at some point in the day that when we've got a little distance, that they saw that I was trying to be helpful. And if they didn't, I'm sorry. And I hope they come back for another chance at it. But I have to keep trying. I have to keep.
Do you have like any sort of little ritual, like when you have a negative interaction like that, how do you shake it off? Because I carry these things with me forever.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's more internal work than it is about offering hospitality. I'm really good at ruminating stuff. I can get in that in my head and do that kind of thing. Yeah, it's really simple and not is just take a moment and take a big, deep, long breath. And if you get lost in a moment like that, you're not there for the next one. And so I try to just move forward with
shake the dust off your feet,
as Taylor would say, shake it off. Yeah. I try to shake it off, and then I try to revisit it another time when I'm not in, the middle of welcoming others, because there's I can't afford to let a bad interaction with one person, carry over to others that morning. And so really I just try to push through it and deal with it later in the day and think, look back at distance is good anyway. Look back at it and see where I wasn't meeting that person's need, where my actions, my words might not have been helpful. And if it's somebody that, that I have the ability to reconnect with, revisiting with them and saying, this is how I'm sorry that I didn't see this, and this was where I was coming from, or whatever. But letting go of those thoughts to they're not helpful in any of our work, right? I mean, they're just not. Yeah.
Well, let's dream together for a moment, shall we?
Shall we?
If Trietsch became a church known in the community for radical hospitality, what would you experience when you walked through these doors?
Oh, you would see a lot of really loved on people, right? Well loved on people. You would see people that would say, I'm okay with your brokenness. I'm okay with your struggle. Come sit down. I want to hear your story. I want to hear. I want to know what you need, and not as a task, because honestly, the task is easy, right? If somebody says, I've lost my job, I can't pay my bills, I need groceries, I need gas. We all know what we need to do, Who's going to sit and listen of how scary that is? Who's going to sit and witness that insecurity? Who's going to... We're all so quick to jump on the things that we can do.
What would you say to the people who say, well, this church is that? We are that already.
Keep looking. Keep looking. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that if we were a church whose culture was radical hospitality, it would be overwhelming when you walk through the door. Not for a second would you have to wonder, where am I supposed to go? Am I going to have to sit by myself? The anxiety would immediately melt away because someone would grab you by the hand and say, come sit with me.
Right. Am I going to make a wrong move?
Yeah.
Do I belong here? I mean, I didn't grow up in the church. And I remember when I very first started having experience with the church, I actually came from my workplace. I was surrounded by a group of people who had very strong relationships with God. And I remember thinking, I'm not worthy all the time. I'm not worthy, but I've got this whole list of all these things I've done wrong. I'm not worthy. I don't belong there. That's for you, not me. And I never think I'm alone in anything that I feel. And I know there are people that come through these doors that feel that too. And wow, what if we could surround them in love and go, no, hey, here's the table. Come sit with me.
Yeah.
Well,
it makes me think of the song, the old hymn, it only takes a spark to get a fire going.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, I talked about that radical hospitality that I experienced at Oak Lawn, where they literally like grabbed me and said, hey, you're coming with us. And because of that experience, I want to be that for other people because it meant so much to me. It's exactly what you said at the beginning. It's contagious. And so a few weeks ago, there was a young woman who came in, and I sing in the choir. So it's not easy to get in and out of the choir loft. So when they do the passing of the peace, I, you know, was just kind of looking at her. It was the Sunday after the election. And she was really struggling. She was having a hard time. She was crying. She was, you know, very emotional, very vulnerable. And I got to talk to her after the service. I didn't get to her during the passing of the peace that we do. But I talked to her after the service and I was like, hey, I haven't seen you before and I really wanted to meet you. And she was like, I'm so sorry. I'm a complete mess. And, you know, was kind of already like, I was like, we're all a mess.
Yeah.
We're all a mess.
Me too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had, you know, it was the most boring. So we basically had like, our starting Women of Faith, which is, I think what they call United Methodist Women is now called Women of Faith or Women in Faith or whatever.
Yeah. So
So they're wanting to start a chapter at Oak Lawn. And so there was a little committee meeting after church for anyone who was interested. And I was just like, hey,
would you want to come to that?
Do you want to come with? I'm going to this meeting afterwards. You want to grab a cup of coffee and come with me? And she was like, yeah. And she sat with me in this Women of Faith committee meeting. And I don't know if she's interested at all in that group, but I think that she just needed to be with people.
Yep.
And, you know, I felt weird even inviting her to that because it's very like bureaucratic internal committee meeting.
Right.
But
not necessarily something you would be interested in.
Right.
Yeah.
It's nothing like the lunch bunch.
Right.
But but I invited her and she said, yeah. And she's come back every week and she has found people to sit with on Sunday morning. And that's just like one small little thing. But the reason I did that for her is because Christine did that for me 4 years ago.
Yeah. We were blessed to be a blessing. I mean, it's, you know, it is what it is. That's what it is. You know, one of the challenges is as a hospitality coordinator is the warm welcome that you got at Oak Lawn may send somebody running.
Yeah.
That is one of our challenges, right? Is reading the need of people and how you want to be left alone. Or how you want to be embraced.
I think that they read me because I started going to church again because I wanted to make friends.
Right.
In that moment of my life.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So they read me like a book.
When I talked about coming here and being lost for 2 years, I'd have ran. Me, the hospitality coordinator now, would have ran had I come in here and y'all warm welcomed me like that.
Yeah.
I think that. I don't know. Maybe I would have been like, yeah, this is what was supposed to be, you know. So, yeah, that is one of the challenges for us is to welcome people and make them feel like they matter and they belong.
In a way that means something to them individually.
And that is the challenge. There's a wonderful, I just popped in my head, there's a wonderful book I read once about like a top chef in New York who has a restaurant that you can imagine in New York it's hard to make a name for yourself. And they make a name for themselves by hearing the needs of the people at the table and then doing these crazy out-of-the-box things to help them at a restaurant. And he's like, I don't know what that award is for being like the top restaurants in New York. I can't think of what it's called, but he's like one of the top ones now.
James Beard.
I don't think it's that. It's another one. I can't recall. But he's like one of the best restaurants in New York, and it's his hospitality. It's not his food. So translate that into what we've been talking about. It's not the task. It's not the checklist. It's that they are seen, and they are heard, and they matter. The food's great too, I'm sure. But
so. Why would you say, I feel like you just answered it, but I'm going to let you answer it again in a different way if you want to. Why do you think radical hospitality is so central to the Christian faith? How does it reflect God?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's God's message. It's to love everyone, be generous in that love. He calls us to invite others. You know, there's a line in the Bible that says, you never know, you may entertain an angel. We don't know. And so, you know, what we've been given, all that we have, who we are, is not for our own selves. It's for everyone else. And we're to share that.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to start practicing this radical hospitality but doesn't know where to start?
Mm-hmm. Funny, I'll say this when I've said it's not about you, but it has to come from, to be genuine, it has to come from someplace within you, right? So what matters to you? What's of interest to you? What do you care about? And if it's that you care about gardening, because you know I do that. If you care about gardening, why don't you go share some of your flowers with somebody? If you care about gardening, take some clippings. If you care about gardening, have a conversation with your neighbor about their garden. Start there, and it will go from there. Like, if it comes from a place that you're passionate about, something that matters to you, it already is easy to present because of your passion. And once you can present it, you feel comfortable. And so all those things that you might not, the reasons that you might not want to be hospitable because you've got your own, things that are hard for you. If you come from something that you're passionate about, you're already bought in. And if you share something that you're passionate about with other people in a generous way, if you love to make cards, then go give some cards to people that don't expect it. If you whatever it is, however you find yourself in this world, what you love and what means something to you, find a way to share that. Find a way to share that one little thing with somebody that doesn't expect it. Because remember, part of radical hospitality is to surprise and delight people. So, could it be with the people that live in your house? Sure. But what if you stretched? Because our goal, we've been called to do this. Our goal is to look outside of ourselves. Our goal is to share, to listen, to encourage, to love. So stretch a little bit in that give, and find a way that you can just make maybe a tiny little bit of brightness in someone's world for a moment. You don't have to change your lives. You just have to offer a moment.
Well, thank you so much, Laura. I always value our conversations together, and I learn so much from you every time we talk.
Thank you. I feel the same way. Thank you.
The Life Plus God podcast is hosted, written, and produced by me, Alyssa Robinson, and sponsored by Trietsch Memorial United Methodist Church in Flower Mound, Texas. Check out Trietsch online at tmumc.org or in person to see if this church is a right fit for you and your family. We'd love for you to visit us soon. And if you like the podcast, don't forget to subscribe and rate us on your podcast platform to help other people find our content. Join us next week, and let's keep growing in relationship with Christ together.